I'm a really big fan of handheld gaming. I think I've owned almost every single major handheld release that's been put out, even the PS Vita. I used to play Mortal Kombat 9 on this, that was it, and then I let it sit in my closet for like 10 years. There's just something about being able to play on the couch and I can like have the TV on, maybe have a YouTube video on my phone, put in some headphones, listen to some music, basically whatever I can get to make sure that I do not have a singular thought come across my head. So when I heard about the Playdate console, I was invested, both figuratively and financially because I bought it. I just feel like these days there aren't a lot of like classic handhelds, you know, like all of the portables that we have these days are just portable ways to play console games, which is cool. I really like being able to do that, but you just don't have that same experience of playing a game that was made specifically for that console. Well, the Playdate is the answer to that. This thing has a very unique set of games that comes with it. A lot of them are exclusive, if not all of them exclusive. So I just wanted to take the time to talk about it because I've really been enjoying my time playing it, and I don't think a lot of people are going to own this console, so I think it'll be good to highlight some things that I like about it. So the main selling point of the Playdate is the fact that it has a crank that you use to control it. This is like the main thing that they use in marketing. This is their differentiating factor. Sometimes it's used subtly, sometimes it is the only control method. It really just depends, but that is like the main focus. I understand if this feels like a gimmick, it seems like it at first, but honestly, a lot of the games know how to utilize it in good ways, or if they don't know how to utilize it, they just don't utilize it. It seems like the developers really know what they're doing in terms of making a good game and not just using the crank. So the Playdate comes with 24 games free. They come to you over like a 12-week period. They consider this season 1, so like you get 2 games at the start and then 2 games once a week so that you can spread it out. These can range anywhere from like high score based arcade games to something that's a very story driven RPG or visual novel. There is a lot of variety here, which I think is good for a console like this. The first 2 games that come with this console are Whitewater Wipeout and Casual Birder. Now I think the best way to describe these two is to use an analogy. So Whitewater Wipeout is like Wii Sports and Casual Birder is more like something like Twilight Princess. And I'm not talking about genre necessarily because that's not the genres that these really are. I'm talking more so in the way that it utilizes its gimmick. The control scheme for Whitewater Wipeout is only the crank. You do not have the option to use the D-pad or the A buttons or anything like that. You can only control this by using the crank. It's also an arcade style game, so you're not really going through any story. You're pretty much just trying to see the highest score that you can get, which is very similar to something like Wii Sports. You turn the crank up, your character goes up. You turn the crank down, your character points down. You gotta go up waves, do tricks. The tricks are pretty much just spins. I think this one is fine. Visually, I really like it, but honestly, it just kind of gets old too quickly. I tried looking at videos, but I think it is literally just the same thing over and over again of your character just going down a wave, going up a wave, doing a spin, and then just trying to get as high of a score as you can. I don't like that. That's not really the type of game that I enjoyed doing. I played it a couple times whenever I first got the console, and then I just haven't picked it back up since. But like I said, visually it is very cool. Every time you wipe out, there's like this 90s insult that it throws at you. It changes it up every time. It just looks very 90s. I think it was inspired by California Games, which I think is an NES game. But yeah, other than building up a score, there's just not really anything else to care about, and I just kind of want a little bit more from it. Casual Birder, though, this one is a lot of fun. It's supposed to be like an RPG, very similar to Pokemon, but almost like a parody of Pokemon without being a direct parody of Pokemon. Instead of going through and catching these fantastical monsters and crazy creatures and fighting and everything like that, all you do is just take photos of birds and like Cleveland or something like that. The game is very self-aware. It understands that this is not meant to be taken very seriously, so the humor very much reflects that. Sometimes it can be a little bit hit or miss, but honestly, it's more so hit than miss. I think my favorite part is whenever your character walks into a bar and they say that they're not going to serve you because you're a kid, and your character says that you're like 35 years old or something. I really did think my character was a kid, so that really caught me off guard. I thought that was very funny. This game mostly is just played with the D-pad and the A and B buttons, so when the crank comes in, it's used to focus your camera. If you're like taking a picture of a bird, you can turn the crank to change the focus of the camera and make sure that you get the bird in the shot, which I felt like it was good. That was a good way to use it. It felt a little bit immersive, but it wasn't like the only thing that you had to be worried about. I would say probably the best part about this game is the characters. They all feel very distinct, both in design and in the way that they speak. It's all just very funny, and you can tell who a character is going to be just by looking at them in like their first line of dialogue. Like, look at this, man. This game's got Donkless. Donkless. Game of the year. Give it, make a spin-off for Donkless. I would play that. Everybody would play the Donkless game. This guy Donkless, he said he's not gonna build you a bridge until you show him a photo of a woodpecker, and he just sits there crying. If I could do that at work, that would be great. But if I tried, I would get fired. So I'm very jealous of Donkless as well. But yeah, Casual Birder, it's a good time. It was a little bit short, but honestly, the puzzles were a lot of fun, and the characters and writing, like I said, were great. So I think it's a really good way to get started on playing on the console. So like I said, normally you get 2 games every week over a period of 12 weeks so that you can get all 24 sort of spread out. But you also have the ability to just get them all at once if you want, which is what I did so that I could kind of make this video and prepare for it and not take 12 weeks to make this. I kind of wish that I would have done maybe like half and half or even done the whole week thing, because it did kind of become overwhelming to see all of the games that are on there all at once. So if you do end up buying one of these, I would suggest doing the weekly thing, or you can choose like where in the season you want to start. So you can get like, I don't know, 4 or 5 games at once and then, you know, keep going from there. Since I had so many, I was just kind of jumping around, not really sure what I wanted to play. I ended up on a game called Sasquachers because that name was kind of funny, and you know, that's, of course I'm going to click a game called Sasquachers. So this is a tactical turn-based game where you play as this group called the Sasquachers. They're like influencers, or maybe they're on like a TV show, and they're just trying to get as many likes and followers as they can by taking photos of like cryptids. The team that you play as is really great. I love all of their personalities and their designs. It's a lot of fun. The developers said that the team was based off of a group of TV show ghost hunters that he would not name, which is fine. We all know that you're talking about Zach Baggins.
Do you want to tickle my big old long toes?
Also, speaking of the developer, apparently this guy has worked on games like Curse of Monkey Island, Sam and Max, SimCity 4. They worked on the Walking Dead Telltale games. So this guy, he's got a stacked resume, so of course I was very excited to play this. And I think the fact that I even played more than 1 mission of this shows that it is a really well done game. Now normally I would not care about a tactical turn-based strategy RPG, it's just not really my style, but I love the fact that you can go out, take photos of these cryptids and get like views and likes. I just think that's really fun. I love getting views and likes, that's why I started a YouTube channel. Speaking of which, you wanna like the video? I know you probably forgot, it's all good, it's no worries, but I just reminded you now, so, you know, feel free, go ahead. I think the best way to describe it is like, you know, like Mario spin-off games, you don't really care about like a regular golf game, but then you add Diddy Kong in and it's like, okay, well, let me go ahead and, you know, give it a shot. I think it kind of applies here with that. The main gameplay of Sasquatchers is that you have a team and each of your team members has one specific type of ability. So for example, like the host can take selfies, or he can like shine his light around and see where the cryptids are, or you have the photographer who of course can like take photographs. So you have to kind of plan out what you want to do, how you want to get the best shots. It's honestly kind of fun. The later levels will add things like trees, so you really have to plan where a cryptid is going to go, where you're going to end up, how you can take the photo without blocking them from things, have your hosts in there. There is a lot that you have to juggle, which is really cool, and I like that there's not actual combat. It's just kind of, you know, a very chill way of playing one of these types of games. The crank is used very sparingly. Basically, whenever you go into a camera mode, so like selfie mode or just taking a photo, you can use the crank to turn 360 degrees and see wherever you need to see. I really like having the precision of the crank because this thing can get very precise. I don't think they necessarily had to do the crank, but the fact that they used it is, I think, better than using like a D-pad or something. Now, one game that does not use the crank at all is a game called Saturday Edition, which I find really interesting because myself and pretty much everyone else consider this to be the best game on the Playdate. I would say that this game does not fit the overall vibe of the Playdate. Like if I showed you all the other games, they're all very like cutesy and weird and kind of upbeat and energetic. And just to put it into perspective, when you first start this game, it gives you a warning that there is going to be realistic violence. So this is a narrative adventure slash like kind of puzzle game where you play as a guy named John Cornfield who claims that he was abducted by aliens and then lived on their planet for like 4 years. Then he came back to Earth and now he's like settling back in. Now at the time that he got abducted, 17 other people went missing and they were never found again. And now in the present day, after he's come back from being abducted, people are now starting to go missing again. The game plays everything really straight and really plays into your perception of like, are we dealing with an unreliable narrator here? Because everything else seems so real, but aliens are so outlandish. So you have to wonder like, did he really get kidnapped by aliens? Are the aliens coming back and abducting more people? Or is John like a suspect? Did he do something? I'm obviously not going to spoil it because I think that you should absolutely play this game, but it did not go where I was expecting it to go, and it was very satisfying once I did start to piece the pieces together. It also plays into it that John does not have a very good memory, so he's constantly writing things down on notes, which is actually the way that you do the puzzles in this game. Essentially, you walk up to a character or some type of item, pull out the note, and that is how you start a certain dialogue sequence. So that is the puzzle aspect, which I thought was a really unique way of doing it. I don't think I've really seen anything like that, especially on like an actual handheld console as opposed to PC. Apparently the developer of this game didn't have like much or if any experience in making like narrative focused games or writing stories, which I find really surprising because the story I think is the best part of this. I beat this game, I think about like 2 weeks ago, and I've still been like piecing things together in my head. Like I'll realize, oh, this was foreshadowing. I mean, just as something subtle, cornfield, that's where aliens would go and do crop circles. I hadn't realized that at first until I'm thinking after. Maybe that's just me, being a little bit dumb because the developer said that that was supposed to be like, something very obvious. But, there are a lot more subtle things that are foreshadowing and things that you start to realize after you're playing. So I'm very excited to see what this developer does next. I also just have to praise the visuals really quick. Everything is so atmospheric and it just looks great. It's going for that realism look, and normally I don't think that that would be able to be very well done on a 1-bit 240 by like 400-ish pixel screen, but this does it really well. Also, the character portraits just being like eyes is so cool. I don't think I've ever seen that before show up in a game, but it still allows people to express emotions, but also not show so much of a certain character. I thought that was really well done. Also, the animations are like super smooth for some reason. None of the other games on the Playdate have animation that look like this. It's almost like rotoscoped, which I think works really well in favor of this because, like I said, it plays into that realism. Everything looks super realistic, but also everything that's kind of happening doesn't really feel that real. So what's really happening? Like I said, I don't want to spoil very much at all about this game because I think everybody should play it, especially if you're interested, which the developer did say that they are planning or hope to be able to put this onto different platforms. So fingers crossed, be on the lookout for that if you are interested in that, or at the very least, go watch like a playthrough of somebody doing it. So the developer kit for the Playdate is open source. Anybody can download it and make games for it. So a lot of people will make games, upload them to like itch.io or like the in-console catalog. You can download third-party games, and that opens up a huge world of possibilities. There's one that I really love. It's called Root Bear. You play as a bear who has to serve root beer to people. At first, it seems really straightforward. I thought it was going to be super easy. Essentially, you just have to fill up to the line, but I realized that there was a lot more complexity to this one than I thought, and once I started playing, it started to get a little bit more complicated than expected. You have to actually look at the size and the shape of the glass as well as how quickly you are pouring something. So if you open up the valve a lot and make things go really fast, you have a lot of fizz that will come out. So you have to time it so that the fizz goes down and the drink goes up. Whereas if you go slow, there's not as much fizz, but you're on a timer. So it's a little bit complicated. I got pretty good at it. You have to get over $100 to beat the high score. I've gotten close, but I have never gotten over there. But I assure you, I'm going to make that happen. Also, make sure that you don't over pour a drink because I come back to this game fairly often when I've got like a couple minutes where I don't really have anything else to do, and it's just fun to go do a couple pours, see how much money I can make, and then move on with my day. This one's a really great one, and it is free. Forrest Byrnes Up in Smoke is one that I think is a lot better whenever you know the context of it. You might recognize the name Forrest Byrnes from the game Firewatch if you've ever played that. I didn't because I haven't. But Panic, which is the group that made the Playdate, also published Firewatch, so it's like the same company. Basically, they had some of the people from Firewatch go in and make a game for the Playdate, which I thought was kind of cool. Apparently, there is a Playdate reference in Firewatch, which I don't know if I fully believe because that thing is not yellow and also does not have a crank, which is like the two main things of the Playdate. So, I don't know. That's what the developers say. It's a reference to the Playdate, but I don't know. So for those unaware, Forrest Byrnes is like the in-universe mascot for not starting forest fires. He's basically like Smokey Bear, but if he had a video game. Well, Forrest Byrnes is essentially like an in-universe spin-off. Basically, if somebody made like sort of a bootleg version of a 80s platformer and put him in it, that's what this game would be. It's kind of confusing. I listened to the podcast that the developer did on the Playdate podcast, and they explained it a lot better. So, listen to that if you still don't fully understand and care that much. I have to say, honestly, this one is pretty nice to play. The controls are super tight. I was enjoying it even before I understood the lore of like what was going on with this. You have like a couple different moves, like a shovel jump from Shovel Knight. You can dig like from Shovel Knight. A lot of the moves are just kind of taken from Shovel Knight. It also has procedurally generated levels, which is both good and bad. Good in the sense that you are never playing the same level twice, but bad in the sense that it's not really something that's like handcrafted to where you can feel like, oh, this was made by somebody and it feels super great to play. Realistically, I think that generating levels is probably the better way to go because this thing does not have a lot of storage. So I think you could only probably make, I don't know, like 20 levels or something like that. And once you beat those, there's not really any reason to go back. Whereas with procedural generation, you can go back, see something brand new every time, even if it is just kind of a swap of assets. I do think they made the right call on that. I think every console has some type of game that really defines it as a console. So, like Mario for the NES or something like that. And I think for the Playdate, that game is Crankin's Time Travel Adventure. It was used in the reveal trailer for the Playdate. It's used in like a ton of the promotional material. This guy has basically become an unofficial mascot of the Playdate. And honestly, it's not that hard to see why. This is a game that I think honestly only could work this well on a Playdate console. So you play as this robot, he has to go meet his girlfriend on a date, but he ends up sleeping in past 3 o'clock when they were supposed to meet. So you have to run through all these different obstacles, and then when you get there, you get kicked in the nuts. And bolts. Robot joke. You turn the crank forward to move your character and time forward, and of course backwards brings everything backwards. I think the best way to describe this would be that it is a like time travel puzzle game because a lot of the obstacles are a bit of trial and error and figuring out where your character is going to end up and where these obstacles are going to run into you. It's hard to explain. When you see actual gameplay, you catch on pretty quickly. It's hard to say through words, but you can see this is pretty much what the game looks like. I'm sure that there is a way for this game to exist on other consoles. Like you can maybe use like the analog triggers or something like that to make it work, but really the crank is probably the definitive way to play this game. I don't see this working as well on any other type of control scheme. Sometimes you have to dodge literally like by pixels. So you want something as precise as this crank, and it really does feel as precise as going pixel by pixel. I cannot overstate how good it feels to play this game. This game is also really difficult. I don't know if it's just because I'm bad or if the game is actually hard, but I lose a lot. But it's never that feeling of like, oh, I didn't do anything wrong, it was the game's fault. I always do feel like, okay, I understand why I died. It was because I was not being precise enough with it. Plus, it's so quick whenever you lose a level to starting the level back over again that I just find so much time. I die, go back, and then keep repeating that until I've lost track of time. I don't really know if I would describe this as like a system seller type game, but it is definitely something that if somebody asked me about the Playdate, I would show them that game because it is so straightforward and shows off the console so well. The last game that I want to talk about is one of my favorites. It's between this one and Saturday Edition, and that is a game called Racheteer. So this game is essentially the Playdate's version of The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening. I tried playing the remake of Link's Awakening, and I think I spent more time looking at the wiki on how to get moving forward than actually playing the game, so I was not a huge fan of that, but this game is a lot of fun. It follows very similarly to something like Legend of Zelda, where you've got a sword, you've got to fight enemies, there are dungeons. It is very, very similar, but it's also got a little bit of Metroid influence in the fact that you go in, get a new ability, and then you can go to a different area. You backtrack and then see something you haven't seen before. I think I'm about halfway through playing this one, so I haven't fully beat it, but I've really been just enjoying going through, seeing how it goes, listening to, the music. The music on all of these games is so great. I love listening to all of the soundtracks for all of these games. I always have it cranked up if I'm not like in public or something like that. The story I have been like kind of following. Essentially, you play as a little mechanic and the world has gone into like a new ice age because there's a comet that's hitting. So there are people who want to stay on top of the surface and just kind kind of live through the cold, and then there are people who go underneath the surface and go into like a cryogenic sleep, and you play as a mechanic who has to make sure that everything is still up and running while everybody is sleeping. I think I'm not 100% following everything right now. I've been paying that much attention, but the story is kind of drawing me in more and more as they're introducing more things, which I think is really fun. In terms of use of the crank, it's once again very sparing and very subtle. I think I use it most for doing a spin attack, you know, like how Link does his spin attack if you like hold down the B button. On here you turn the crank, which I like. That makes it feel a little bit fun. I'm looking forward to being able to beat this one. I've gotten farther in it than I did in Link's Awakening, so that's something at least. But yeah, this one is a really good time. It's definitely a must play if you end up getting a Playdate. And I think I'm gonna go ahead and stop it there. Like I said, there are 24 total. I've played through at least a little bit of all of them, but I wanted to highlight just a couple that I've been putting a lot of time into. Let me know if you want to see me talk about any more of these games, because I'd happily do so. It's a good time. Go support the Playdate if you have the ability to. Maybe get one if you're interested in it. Like I said, I want to see more things like this, and I think the only way is if it does well in sales and other people see that it's going to do well in sales. Other than that, I appreciate you checking it out, and I will see you guys in the next video.